Today, we're going to tackle a tool that, it kind of looks like it belongs in a high school geometry class, but for every student pilot, this thing, the navigational plotter, is absolutely essential.
And that might seem a little weird, right? I mean, we live in this age of amazing glass cockpits and screens that give you a direct-to magenta line to follow. But this isn't just about being old-fashioned, it's about building a rock-solid foundational skill.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? We're going to break down exactly what this tool is, how you use it, and why its simple analog nature is still one of a pilot's best friends. So, let's dive in.
All right, first things first. What exactly are we even looking at here? Because it's a lot more than just a piece of plastic. It's a key piece of the whole flight planning puzzle.
So at its heart, a plotter is this really simple but super effective tool made to work hand in glove with paper charts. It's how a pilot takes a simple line drawn on a map and turns it into real-world distance and direction. And you'll almost always see it hanging out with its cousin, the E6B flight computer, which is kind of like a pilot's circular slide rule for all the calculations that come next.
And this is its superpower. It never, ever fails. It doesn't need batteries, it doesn't need software updates, and it works perfectly when you're squeezed into the tight confines of a small airplane. You just can't put a price on that kind of reliability.
Okay, so the real key to mastering the plotter is to understand that you're not just holding one tool. You're actually holding two tools in one, and each half has a totally different and totally critical job.
Think of it like this. On one side, we've got the straight edge. That's your ruler. It's all about distance. And on the other, you've got that semicircle thing. That's your protractor. And it is all about direction, or what we call your course. Distance and direction. I mean, that's Navigation 101, right? Now that ruler part isn't just any old ruler. It's got very specific markings that line up perfectly with the different kinds of aeronautical charts pilots use. You've got scales for the big picture sectional chart for your cross-country trips, and more detailed scales for things like terminal area charts for when you're navigating really busy airspace. So let's start with the first skill, the most straightforward one, just using the plotter as a ruler to figure out how far you're going to fly. And honestly, the process is just as simple as it looks. First, you draw your course line between point A and point B. Then you find the scale in the plotter that matches your chart. Most of the time, that's going to be sectional nautical miles. You stick the 0 mark right on your starting point, and then just read the distance where your destination is. And hey, if your road is longer than the plotter, no big deal. You just make a mark, slide the plotter down, and add the pieces together. Easy. Okay, now here is a super important pro tip, especially for anyone taking their written exams. The pictures in the FAA test booklets, they're not always printed to the exact scale, so you can't just trust your plotter blindly. The right way to do it is to measure the line with your plotter, or even just a blank sheet of paper, and then take that physical length over to the scale printed on that specific test figure to find the actual distance. It's a little trick that can save you a lot of headaches. All right, you've got distance down. Let's move on to the slightly trickier part, finding your direction. This is where that protractor half of the tool really gets to shine. The whole game here is about one thing, alignment. First, you find a line of longitude, one of those north-south lines on the map, that crosses your flight path. You put the little hole in the center of the protractor, the grommet, right on that intersection. Then, you make sure the plotter's straight edge is perfectly lined up with your course line. And finally, you twist the protractor so its grid lines are running perfectly parallel with the map's longitude lines. And here's what that looks like in the real world. For a flight from March Air Force Base to Cochrane Regional, once you do all those steps, you look at where your course line crosses the numbers on the protractor, and bam, you get a true course of 105 degrees. It takes that abstract process and gives you a hard number you can actually use.
But hold on, before you write that number down and call it a day, you have to do a quick sanity check. Just a gut check. You know that due east is 90 degrees and due south is 180. Well, a flight to Cochrane is definitely in a southeasterly direction. So, does 105 degrees make sense? Yeah, it absolutely does. It's this quick little common sense check that keeps you from making a simple but huge mistake.
So you measure that 105-degree course, and you might think, awesome, I'm done. But the truth is, while the plotter's job is pretty much over, the pilot's real number crunching is just getting started. You see, that 105-degree number, that's your path over the ground in a perfect world. A world with zero wind, and where true north on your map is the same as magnetic north, where your compass points. But we don't fly in that world. We have to make corrections. So the plotter gives you that first number, true course.
From there, you grab your E6B to figure out your true heading, which corrects for wind so you don't get blown off course. Next, you have to correct for magnetic variation. That's the difference between the geographic North Pole and the magnetic North Pole. Pilots have a little saying, east is least, west is best, to remember whether to subtract or add. And finally, you make one last tiny correction for magnetic deviation, which is caused by your own plane's electronics messing with the compass. And that gives you your compass heading. That's the number you actually fly.
And that brings us right back to where we started. In a world with GPS at our fingertips, why bother? Well, mastering the plotter isn't just about passing a test or having a plan B. It's about fundamentally understanding all the invisible forces, the wind, the Earth's magnetism, the quirks of your own aircraft that affect your flight. It's about knowing not just where you're going, but understanding why your compass needs to point in a very specific direction to get you there safely.